Today, we're diving into a story that's part mystery, part profound tragedy. It's a story that, strangely enough, begins at its very end, with the death of a woman who spent 50 years locked away from the world, her real name completely lost to time.
So let's set the scene. We're in Peoria, Illinois. It's March 2nd, 1978. And inside a facility called the Queenwood East Nursing Home, an elderly woman's long and difficult life was finally coming to a close.
There was no family to call, not a single friend to mourn her. In the eyes of the state, she was just an anonymous soul. But what no one realized was that the truth of her story and the incredible injustice of it all was just about to be uncovered.
Right, so at the moment she died, the biggest mystery was simply her name. She was a ghost in the system, and her identity was the first secret that needed to be found.
The name they put on her death certificate, Mary Doefour, wasn't actually her name at all. It was a complete bureaucratic fiction. You know, a placeholder name that was assigned to her by the institution, created just so they could have a file. Her real identity had been wiped away decades before.
And this brings us to the sheer, mind-boggling scale of her confinement. 50 years. I mean, that's an entire lifetime spent behind the walls of institutions.
Just let that number really sink in. 50. 50 years. That is half a century. A young woman entered the system, and an old woman died in it, all without ever getting a chance to reclaim her name or her life. It's just staggering.
Her journey through this system started way back in 1920. She was found wandering on a roadside, suffering from amnesia. So she was admitted to the Peoria State Hospital. From there, she got moved to Bartonville for 30 years, and then finally to Queenwood East. She basically became a ghost, just passed from one building to the next as the decades rolled by.
And what did she have to endure during those years? Well, her files list these so-called treatments. She was forcibly medicated, subjected to electric shocks powerful enough to knock her unconscious, and had her head literally plunged into freezing water. And get this wasn't punishment for being violent. No, this was the standard, brutal approach to mental health care at the time.
The environment itself was a kind of punishment. These asylums were horribly overcrowded and understaffed. Can you just imagine one nurse trying to care for 150 patients? The people there weren't really seen as individuals, more like problems that had to be managed. Over time, subjected to all this neglect and brutality, Mary was described as slowly turning into a living corpse.
But her story didn't die with her. See, after she passed away, one person refused to let her become just another forgotten file. And this brings us to the journalist who started asking a very simple but very powerful question.
A young journalist by the name of Rick Baker was given the job of publishing her death notice. It was supposed to be a routine task, but the details, 50 years in an asylum, no known name, they really stuck with him. He just had this feeling there was more to the story, and he decided he was going to find out what it was. And this was the one question that drove his entire investigation. The official record said she was mentally ill. But what if that record was wrong? What if the system had made a catastrophic, life-destroying mistake 50 years earlier?
As Baker started digging into her file and talking with former staff, the contradictions just started piling up. This woman had always insisted she wasn't insane, but simply that she couldn't remember her past. Staff who knew her remembered her as being incredibly intelligent and well-spoken. And maybe most tragically, she held on to this one faint, persistent memory, that she had once been a school teacher.
Baker was convinced a massive injustice had happened. He just needed a lead, a single thread to pull on, from a past that had been so completely buried. And then he got one.
So he took Mary's story public. He published articles about this unnamed woman in newspapers and magazines all over the region. His hope was that even after 50 years, someone, somewhere, might remember a woman who had just vanished. And for months, there was nothing but silence.
And then a letter arrived. It came from an elderly woman in a town called Mount Vernon, and she wrote about a local school teacher who had disappeared without a trace right around 1920. This was it. This was the first real clue in half a century. This one letter opened up a whole new investigation. It led Baker to a name, to a life, and to the likely, heartbreaking identity of Mary Doefour.
The missing teacher's name was Anna. People described her as bright, intelligent, and absolutely beloved by her community. She had big ambitions to continue her education, but in 1920, she was last seen heading to a train station, supposedly on her way to see a doctor, and then, poof, she was gone.
Now, when you put these two stories side by side, this is where it all just clicks into place. Mary, the patient, had blue eyes and curly hair. So did Anna. Mary was known to be highly intelligent. Anna was a bright, aspiring student. Mary had that one faint memory of being a teacher, while Anna was a teacher. Mary was found in 1920. Anna disappeared in 1920. The parallels are just undeniable. Look, without today's DNA technology, it was impossible to prove with 100% certainty that Mary was Anna. But for Rick Baker, and honestly, for everyone who learned the story, the circumstantial evidence was just overwhelming. It really seemed the mystery was solved.
And this right here is the heart of the tragedy. The belief is that Anna suffered some kind of terrible trauma, something so severe it caused total amnesia. But when the authorities found her, they didn't see a victim who needed help, they just saw a mad woman who needed to be locked away. Her life was essentially stolen twice, first by trauma and then by the very system that was supposed to care for her.
Mary Doefour, who was almost certainly Anna, finally got her story told, all because one journalist was curious. But it leaves us with a truly haunting question. How many others weren't so lucky? How many other lives were just lost forever, their names and their stories completely erased by a system that couldn't tell the difference between a broken mind and a broken memory?